So Marco Dwyer, H2o Architects. So Cam Clifford was going to be presented, but he had a medical emergency, so I'll be standing for today. We open with this slide acknowledging the Wurundjeri people because it's a critical part of Yarra Ranges Council, the first council to bring the Indigenous community in, first to do the apology over 15 years ago. They have committees that have worked with us on the journey of this building, much like we start to see with the voice. That journey was assisted because that committee covers a lot of the area that you see through the council out there. They met with us, they've informed a lot of the outcomes that we've done. So Lilydale, slightly east of the previous job we saw with Jeff. The area of Yarra Ranges, very big area, covers a lot of the food bowl of Melbourne. And parts of that are influencing the building. You'll start to see the colours of the vines, the colours of the trees, colours of the landscape spreading through the inside, but also the outside of the building. It's almost a contrast to what we'll see with Jeff's building, in that it's a very bright colour scheme that you see on the outside of Jeff's sort of white approach. It comes out of the earth. Lilydale is famous for its quarries, so the aspect of the quarries were discussed very early on. They also tie into the Indigenous story, because the quarries are the version of Rio Tinto for the Indigenous community. They were a destruction of a sacred site, so their existence is very important in the community. We were going to go further and actually do quite an interesting installation at the entry that talks that story, which I'll go into. So the quarries, in their graphic nature and their colour nature, influence both what we were talking about and what the Indigenous community is about. So here we have the existing buildings. It had a series of portables down the hill, some existing 60s and 70s buildings, and an 80s an extension, more portables out to the side. Orientated up the page to Anderson Street. So the key thing of what the new building did is opening up to Hardy Street to the north. So gave us a good north face, works well with sustainability, gave us a new Civic Plaza. We got rid of all the add-ons. But another key part of sustainability is reuse. Over 60% of it is repurposing these existing buildings. If you see a 60s or sort of 70s building to be repurposed, run. They're terrible things to use. They certainly leak. They're often not built the way they were told. Certification is even more dodgy than now. So you end up, pulling buildings apart and finding that the fabric's nothing like it was meant to be. And there's a lot of money involved. That said, it's 5,000 square metre for the total build. So it's a low-cost build, but high impact. In design terms, it draws on the typology of town halls, because it is effectively a town hall. It's got the council accommodations where you go and pay your rates to meet the planners as well. But it's also a town hall in terms of the council meets there, and it's a hall for hire, which is another part of the sustainability. So that graphic of the idea of a series of verticals presenting a civic front, the ideas of steps, even the ideas of pedestal are hidden inside the geography of this new frontage to Hardy Street. So what we've got is the kick-up occurring here with the steps leading into the entry, suggesting entry, but the steps giving that reference to the grandeur of what we have with town halls. The verticals representing the ideas of colour. The idea of the colours, of course, was much as we said through the Indigenous approaches. Even the idea of kicking up here, as you see through that entry part, it becomes a bundle beak, which is like what you saw in Jeff's image before. Bunjil was the god creature that created the quarries, and is a very important part of the local Indigenous community. So we felt critical that it's referenced in some way, and that's where we're going to do an art installation that talks about that sort of intervention at the quarries. The whole Civic Plaza thing is important to the scheme, but also there's village green. It's part of how the council workers can use and engage the landscape, but it's also there, again, as part of the sustainability of the building. The whole section of the front of the building opens up. There's really a hall for hire. It'll be there for council to use for, say, Australian Day citizenship ceremonies by opening up all the walls. But it also can open out into the village green, so it can have external hiring components or council facilities, all fed from a central kitchen in there as part of that approach. So then we end up with this sort of approach there. There's the front talking into Bunjil's area. In terms of the sustainability, it does all the usual things which we used to be revolutionary. They were revolutionary back in 2016 when this building was started, but they're still important. See, zero gas. Well, no one was talking that back in 2016. It's become a discussion that's recent. that's in there. And so this building's been developed over stages. It was always there in the dialogue because the council was very advanced in sustainability. Really low numbers, 70 kilowatt per metre squared per year, so 100 volts PV. You know, again, it's stuff that's become, thankfully, it's getting more and more mainstream, but back then it was very revolutionary and quite exciting to see a council doing it. But the big one is that idea of reusing the existing building. It's a complete dud, you know. It was meant to be double skin. The internal skin wasn't even connected to the external skin, no ties. You know. Earthquake, you know, when we hit it, we were once the first to be starting to get into this earthquake issue. It's got lots more structure in there. It's the issue that's now plaguing a lot of these buildings. But again, it's the ones that this period is particularly difficult with the earthquake approach. The skinning of it in concrete is important. Yes, it's got high carbon for sustainability, but it's got good longevity. It's good to work approaches of thermal mass, and also it's much better than the other one that everyone's ending up with, which is just glass buildings. All of the glazing is worked up with Wurundjeri retractable, weather stationed sort of screening, so we can work the thermal load on the building to include it or exclude it depending on the time of year. The whole building, in terms of flexibility, is about opening up in terms of community engagement and the like. Reuse is in there, the green showing how much of this existing internal, what was a library and what was a council facility, was reused on the upper level with the new extension here and flexible open spaces opening out. And then on the lower ground, more retention. Again, you know, very difficult stuff, probably as expensive to do reuse as it was for new, but in sustainability terms, a critical statement to the community that we can reuse and recycle buildings, we can make them thermally efficient, we can make them work to what we're about. Large external deck that was there as part of an existing roof, delivered with not much extra cost, and that again is part of the flexibility of the space. The third part of the intervention of the building is it's activity-based working. So again, 216, no one was talking at them. A group called Dandenong we worked with the council to introduce it to the staff. And so it was one of the first that got into that space. Now that's certainly become a common dialogue, but the benefit is that this one was delivered through working from home through COVID. So council workers are struggling at the moment across most councils to get people back. This one's working. 90% of workers are back in the office because it's such a joy to be having something that has all these different activities, that's new, that's there as an approach that you can flexibly get into. Here's a good example. This is the front foyer where you come in and meet the council. We would have preferred it doesn't have the COVID screens because we wanted that sort of approach that's got limited interactions and problems. You come in, you meet the receptionist, you take off to do the planner on the side. 1 minute?
That's time.
That's it.
Sorry, I gave you the note on the desk.
Okay. And so as we go through there, you see the flexibility and our very happy council and mayor on the internals of the building. Any questions?